All right, good evening. Good to see you guys here. I just want to clarify something. I am not responsible for the rain on Wednesdays, even though some people have claimed I am. But I am glad you're here, and I do hope it dries out for you. Feels like other people have been wearing this thing recently. All right. So we ended last time by we were kind of looking at some different prophecies in the Old Testament and seeing how they were fulfilled. And we're looking at prophecies that were fulfilled in a short period of time, or clearly, most of them clearly fulfilled even before the New Testament started. Today, we're going to look at the last of those, but one that actually gets us into the fulfillment of Jesus' prophecies. So we're kind of building here. And I know some of you are like, when are we going to get to Revelation? When are we going to see this stuff? We will get there. But the reason I'm doing it the way I am is because if I go through Revelation and I tell you this is this, all that is my opinion, right? I'm trying to give you a system of way of thinking that fits with the Scriptures, with how the Scriptures should be interpreted, so you can go to the same passages and say, yeah, I think it might be this, or yeah, maybe that's a good idea. You can actually come to the Scriptures and have a ability to do some interpretation. I do not think you'll understand everything in Revelation. Anyone who claims they do, I immediately know it's a bunch of baloney. But at the same point, you can understand some things in Revelation when you understand the things that we're talking about here. So I'm trying to give you the tools that even you can go to the prophecy in places like Ezekiel and in the minor prophets and stuff that Jesus says, and 1st and 2nd Thessalonians and into Jude and Revelation, and you can look at those things and they won't be as confusing. You'll kind of be able to start putting them into a framework. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And today we're going to start into Old Testament prophecies of Jesus that are fulfilled in the first coming. When I say first coming, is when Jesus came as a baby, he lived, did ministry, then he died on the cross, then he rose again, then he ascended to heaven. That's his first coming, okay? I say first because he's coming back again. He is going to come back a second time, and that second coming, that's what we usually think of as end times, right? Second coming stuff. We will get to second coming stuff in the Old Testament when we're done with the first coming stuff. So I don't know how long it's going to take to go through this. Maybe fast, maybe slow. There's a lot of passages here. So, but I'm also open to any questions or discussion about this. So we're going to start with the 70 weeks of Daniel. Any questions about past stuff that we've done or anything I've said so far? Okay. I'm not giving out prizes for the best question asked. I'm sorry. So, Daniel chapter 9. This one definitely going to spend a few minutes in, so it's worth looking up. Daniel 9. So, now you remember, Daniel knew that there were 70 years of the exile, and he knew it was coming to an end, and he started praying to God for the end to come, and so the people might go back to the city. God gives another prophecy here of 70 weeks. Now, 70 weeks is just over a year, right? But this is a type of weeks in Hebrew. The word used for weeks is often used for 7-day weeks and 7-year weeks. Okay? So those are the two ways it's used. And so you just have to decide which one it is. And looking at it, it's pretty quick and easy to figure out this doesn't happen in just over a year. So you check the 70 weeks of 7 years. So 70 sets of 7 years. You guys can do your math, right? 70 times 7 is 490. Okay, 490 years, okay? So these are 70 years. You could put 490 down here, 483, 49 over there, okay? All right, let's read it. Daniel 9, starting verse 24. 70 weeks are decreed about your people and your holy city, to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, and to atone for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal both vision and prophet, and to anoint a most holy place. Know therefore and understand that from the going out of the word to restore and build Jerusalem, to the coming of an anointed one, a prince, there shall be 7 weeks. Then for 62 weeks it shall be built again with squares and a moat, but in a troubled time. And after the 62 weeks, an anointed one shall be cut off and shall have nothing. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Its end shall come with a flood. And to the end there shall be war. Desolations are decreed. And he shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week. And for half of the week he shall put an end to the sacrifice and offering. And on the wing of abominations shall come one who makes desolate until the decreed end is poured out on the desolator. All right. Now, verse 27 and really in the verse 26 is actually talking about the end times stuff still yet to come. So let me explain what's going on here. Okay, so the exile is ending. There is a new time period going to start. And God often shows people here, and he's showing that he's in control of things. Now, when all the Israelites are scattered and in exile, it kind of looks like all God's promises have been left off. And he's making clear here the promises are not left off. And he says this a lot in the prophets, that it's not done. I still have a plan for you. And part of this plan, he says, I have it 70 weeks. So what is the start of the 70 weeks? This 490 years. What's it say here in verse 24? Actually, I think it's 25. Okay, the decree. What's the decree for? It is the building of Jerusalem. There's a couple different times you could do on this. Okay, it could be when Cyrus sends them back. Make sure I get the names right here. They are sent back so they can go back. They're allowed to go back. And they go back and start building the temple first. And then they have to stop on the temple. And then they're allowed to build the temple again. And then Nehemiah is sent back to build up the wall. The best estimation is probably the wall. So I realized, well, maybe I do have these things down here. Yes, so there's two options of how we can do the times here. All right, so there's two options on the timing, which actually almost proves it more. So the 70 weeks of 490 years, we'll say 490 up here so we know, ends with Jesus, okay? And you can end in two different dates, okay? This can be 26 or 33, depending on which way you do the math here, okay? 26 AD, they try to attach to the baptism, and 33, they attach to the crucifixion and resurrection. That's probably too small for you to read, but anyway, the point is not to know the exact dates here, but if you go Ezra going back, then is the start. If this is Ezra, then you get to this date of baptism, which may have been when the baptism was. We're not sure exactly when he was crucified, either 30 or 33. So the other option is Nehemiah, when he goes back to build the wall. And if you follow that, then you end on the 33 crucifixion, which I think is the probably better one. So the rebuilding of the wall fits better with Nehemiah because he actually the rebuilding of Jerusalem, because he's actually building the wall back. That actually makes it a city then. And 33 AD makes more sense. The crucifixion makes more sense than the baptism. And actually that baptism is probably early. So anyway, that's probably the better one, but really either one of those. What? What did you say? This is the crucifixion is 30 or 33, and the baptism is 26 or like 29. So you got to match up dates a little bit. It's a little bit playing around with the numbers. But there are two ways to even explain how the weeks go. But either way, what you have is he gives a literal prediction here of how many years until, I'm even putting this in the wrong spot here. I'm throwing everyone off. So I'll put 26 and 33 because that's when it's supposed to be. So here is what he says. He says, restore, build Jerusalem. And I'm just going to go with Nehemiah because I think that's the better one. So restore and build Jerusalem in 445 BC. And then we have 396. Okay, 49 years. Until the prince is cut off. So that must mean the leader is cut off. Now you're going to go prince, anointed one. Oh, that sounds like the Messiah. But he's not going to last long. He will be cut off in 62 weeks, which is this length, 69.7, 62 weeks. That it'll be rebuilt again with squares and a moat, but in a troubled time. And they're not going to be free. It's not going to be a comfortable time. It's an oppressed time. Jerusalem exists for this time, but it's oppressed. There's other nations ruling things, which Daniel's been talking about what those other nations are. There's already been the Babylon, now there's Media, Persia, Persian Empire, and then the Greeks are going to come, and the Greeks are going to split up, and different factions of the Greeks are going to be attacking, and then the Romans are going to come in, they're going to take control. And really, the Jews aren't free almost at all in this time period. It's a little gap they are. But even then, it's not even the whole land. It's just a part of it that is free. But these 70 weeks, the last week is separated off as being the end one. So it's 7, 62, and then the end, in verse 26, we should say, the end of 62, an anointed one shall be cut off and shall have nothing. So again, there's another anointed one here that's cut off. But this anointed one starts being connected with the end. And this anointed one is the reference to Jesus. He is cut off when he was what? When was Jesus cut off? When he was crucified, okay? That's what it's talking about. He was cut off when he was crucified. So you kind of, as you see here, there's a lot of pieces to be putting in together here. As you start putting in the pieces, you're like, it really matches up. And this isn't something that only one guy has seen or a couple people have seen because one guy told them that it matches up this way. Lots of people have looked at the same passage and been able to work it out and say, wait a second, we're talking about a prince, anointed one, but didn't last. And then here comes another one that's cut off. And then there's a whole big thing going to happen here. Now, some would say that when Jesus came, he offered the kingdom so that the Jews could have accepted him, and then this week would have happened, and then the millennium would have happened. Whether it was offered or not isn't that important because it was never going to be accepted because God knew it wasn't going to be accepted. But Jesus was rejected here, not accepted. Now, there's a gap here. And when you see it the way it is now, you don't see the gap. You don't see the gap of the last 7 years. But it says, after 62 weeks, an anointed one shall be cut off and shall have nothing. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So the city and the sanctuary are going to be destroyed after Christ comes. Christ came at about 0, probably born between 4 and 6 BC. And then he dies at 30 or 33 AD. He dies, and by 70 AD, Jerusalem is destroyed, completely destroyed. Now, that doesn't match up exactly numbers, but it just says after that it will be destroyed. Its end shall come with a flood. To the end there shall be war. Desolations are decreed. Then verse 27 says, and he shall make a strong covenant for 1 week. Now we get the 1 week here. Okay? Now, is this happening immediately after? It says the 1 week, the half the week there will be put an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of abominations there shall come one who makes desolate. So, in this period of time, naturally you would just assume that all the weeks are together. But if you're looking at the wording here, it talks about anointed one's going to come, the city's going to get destroyed, and then someone's going to come along for a week, and half the week he's going to end sacrifices. Well, how do you have sacrifices if you don't have a temple and the city is destroyed? It's fuzzy, right? If you're reading this in Daniel's time, it's fuzzy. You can kind of put together the years and go, okay, maybe there's a Messiah coming on this schedule. But the last years is kind of confusing. But when we look back after the New Testament, we see that this is a gap here for the church age. That stage we are in now, and we don't know how long this gap is between this 69th and the 70th week. And so sometimes the tribulation, which is this time here, which is the majority of Revelation, talks about the tribulation. Now, this 7-year period is yet to come. Daniel just gives us a hint of it yet to come. When we get to the New Testament, it gives us a lot of clarity about it. Revelation gives us a lot more clarity about what's going on during that 7 years. All right, that was a blitz. Questions? Yes. So each of these one is 7 years. So this is a week of years. So, like, I know, all this math, too much.
The prince there under 7, who is that referring to?
See, I realized here tonight, I was like, oh, shoot, I don't know who the prince is. So I started looking it up and I couldn't find it. So it certainly is a little picture of the Christ to come. I'll have to think about who that refers to here. But it is talking about a leader of the people. Prince is also a reference to not a king, right? A prince is someone that might be in charge, but they're not the complete fulfillment or complete stability of the nation.
So which verse is that? Refers to that?
Verse 25. To the coming of an anointed one, a prince, there shall be 7 weeks.
Mine says the ruler, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you see it, when you just read that verse, you might think, well, that sounds like Jesus because he's the anointed one. But a lot of times in the Old Testament, it refers to anointed ones that are not, anointed one refers to like a priest, one who was anointed, or a king who was anointed. David was anointed just like Saul was anointed. But then also the priests were anointed. And so when it talks about anointed one, when it ultimately refers to Jesus, it's talking about both he is king and priest, but he's also the prophet. So
In my translation, it says, until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So to me, it seems like
Okay, your one translates it Messiah there?
Messiah, the Prince,
Okay.
New American Standard.
Anointed one can mean, is related to the word Messiah. So that's why they're interpreting it that way. So I can't say I understand this 100%, but what I'm kind of getting at here is the details of it I can't give you exact answers to. But this is supposed to be referring to a leader at this point. And if it is just referring to, as Rod said, his Bible is kind of referring to that this is all talking about the prince to come here. But there's some division that's happening here. And so you have to get, what is this description here? Why is it 7 split off from the 69 instead of just 69 weeks in 1 week? So, yeah, this one I don't understand exactly, but what I do understand is when you do the dates here, you're getting to your 490, well, 483 to here. And you're also getting these matching up of, there really is a timetable set out that's exact of the dates of when he's coming, when there is going to be a Messiah coming. Sorry, I couldn't help you more with that. I realized I didn't look at that as carefully as I should have. Any other questions? Does this make some sense? Now, this is why prophecy is tough, because there's a lot of references, and each one you kind of have to figure out what's it referring to, right? So we just talked about the building of the city, the decree. We talked about who this anointed one, the priest, is, how you fit in, what 70 weeks mean, or 7 weeks, and 70 weeks, 7 weeks, 62 weeks, another week, a half a week. The half a week's in here, by the way, which Revelation deals with that too, that there's a split. There's 3.5 years, 3.5 years. In Revelation, it actually talks about it in months, years, and days, all referring to 3.5 years. So you are sure that it really is a literal 3.5 years. We'll see that a little later. But there's a lot of stuff that's fuzzy here, right? But what you can figure out is 70 sets of 7 years, 490 years from the building of the Jerusalem. It matches up way too close to be random. God knows what he's doing, and he's picking out the time here. With 7 years remaining. But there is one going to rise up. He will make a strong covenant. And then there's also going to be a half a week at the end of sacrifice and offering. And there's going to be great abominations. Which there's abomination that happens during this period of time here. But it's not by Antiochus Epiphanes. But that is not the one that's as big as the one that's going to happen in the tribulation. And that guy that rises up will be called the Antichrist in Revelation. So Daniel, in about 4 verses, goes into everything leading up to and including Revelation in a very short period of time. Kind of gives a survey or estimate of what's going to happen. So
that's where you get the 3.5 and 3.5.
yeah.
3.5 and then the sacrifices.
The 3.5 and 3.5 are coming from Revelation, but here it talks about half a week. Half a week, half of 7 is 3.5.
This one says, he will confirm a covenant with many for 1/7, and in the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. So that matches what you're saying.
Yes. And make a covenant for the 1/7, the last 7, and halfway through, there's going to be a big change happening, which we're going to find a lot more details about that in Revelation. What about the sacrifice and offerings? That will also be talked about in Revelation in a lot more detail, that they will be open, that they will sacrifice an offering. There's a temple talked about in Revelation that will be on earth. So that temple will be a place of actual worship and actual sacrifice on earth before Christ's return. So now I am giving a literal interpretation I'm referring to stuff in Revelation and things like that. Well, I think these things are literal because we keep seeing these prophecies being fulfilled literally. But there's also a description each time using some reference to something that is harder to figure out, or it's kind of broad. It's like, well, a prince will arise. Well, there's been lots of princes, right? But if you put the pieces together, you can go, oh, it must be referring to this. Same thing with the beast, talking about the different nations. You look at it afterwards and go, okay, this beast does really match the characteristics of this empire. And so we can look back and say, he must have clearly known what was going to happen. Which shouldn't be surprising to us that God knows the future. But it is a little surprising that he gives us some of the future.
When you talk about Christ's return, what are you referring to?
Christ's return, when Christ is on earth. Physically, when he is physically on earth.
And that would be when the end of the tribulation.
Yes. End of the tribulation. Now, if the rapture is in the beginning of the tribulation, then he will have a trumpet call from the air, and we will rise up and meet him in the air. If the trumpet call or rapture is at the end of the tribulation, then we just kind of go up and follow him down. Either way, though, he only comes down to the end of the tribulation, and that's when his kingdom is going to start. He's going to literally land on the Mount of Olives, and he's going to take control of the world again. I can't wait for that day, right? It will be destruction to the wicked, but it will also be the way of peace, that we will be able to have peace on earth. So I'm going to move on. You're welcome to ask me more questions. Some of this will become more clear, especially down here, as when we get into Revelation. The pre and post. That's the pre-trib view. This would be the post-trib view. Okay, and we'll get into those discussions about those things in a little while. So it'll at least be a couple weeks until we're hitting that kind of stuff. Actually, it will only be a few weeks. We'll be into that. So let's get into some of these prophecies of Jesus. I'm going to kind of move through some of these, but please stop me if you want to, okay? We're going to move through these kind of quick because some of them are very clear, very obvious, but at the same point, I want you to see them. I'm going to see the quantity of them. I just picked out some of the best ones, the clearest ones. There's an estimation of about 300. Some say higher, up to like 360. Prophecies, some say even higher than that. They go into really detail little things. But prophecies about Jesus that were fulfilled in the first coming of Jesus, the first time he came. At least 300 prophecies in the Old Testament that Jesus fulfilled in his first coming. There's other prophecies he has yet to fulfill that are coming in the second coming. That's a lot. Now, there's different types of prophecies here. I'm going to pick out the clear ones, okay? There's a number of them that are going to talk about there is a king to come that will reign on the throne of David, stuff like that. You're going to say, okay, it is referring to Jesus, but it could have been like fulfilled by other people, potentially. Or it's going to say like a signet ring or a branch from David. Ruler, priest ideas are going to rise up. And some of those things are kind of fuzzy, like they add to it, but they certainly aren't enough that you would be able to say, well, Jesus has to be the one. The ones I'm giving you today, they're too specific to be talking about anyone else. Even just like 2 or 3 of these together just makes it, he's the only one that fits it. only one that could fit it. When you add in this, the 70 weeks of Daniel, when you get a time period of a narrow time period here of 10 years or something like that, that Jesus would have had to have arrived and been cut off, you're really getting to a point that almost no one can match this up, right? More than 2 or 3 of these things on this list. So let's look at this. For Malachi 3:1, a messenger first is going to come. It says, "Behold, I send my messenger, and he will prepare the way before me, and the Lord whom you seek will suddenly come to his temple, and the messenger of the covenant in whom you delight. Behold, he is coming, says the Lord of hosts." So there's a messenger coming, and then this Messiah will come to his temple. The Lord whom you seek will come to his temple. So this ruler will come to his temple. So there has to be a temple, and he has to come to it. There's no temple even now. Some of these things only can be fulfilled in this time period when Jesus showed up. So it also talks about in Isaiah 40 about the messenger to come. Says, "A voice cries, in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be lifted up, and every mountain and hill be made low. The uneven ground shall become level, and the rough places a plain. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken." Now, a lot of prophecies in the Old Testament, there can be a combination of both stuff talking about the first coming and the second coming together, okay? We don't need to get scared off by that. He's just looking ahead. Sometimes people explain this by, if you're looking ahead and you see a mountain and there's another mountain behind it, it looks like from a distance, if you're this stick figure over here and you're looking, it looks like from this perspective, you don't see the valley, you just see mountain, mountain, right? And they look like they're right on top of each other, but they're not, right? This could be a long distance between, hundreds of miles. If this mountain's big enough and your angle's right, it can look like it that way. It's very close, but it might not be. It could be very close, though. So this messenger is going to come. All flesh is going to see it. Now that's talking about the second coming, from the mouth of the Lord has spoken, and the glory shall be revealed. In some ways it was revealed in the first coming, of more full sense in the second coming. Now who's this messenger is talking about in Malachi and Isaiah? John the Baptist, okay? When John the Baptist comes, he is referred to by this passage. In fact, Jesus refers to this passage, I believe. So all these things, these are basically, I picked out ones that have specific reference in the New Testament, okay? Either it specifically says it's a fulfillment of it, or it's so clear, most of them it specifically says. But some of them it's just so clear, you know, okay, that has to fit with Jesus. Okay, the next one, descendant of Abraham, and he's going to bless all nations. This is all the way back in Genesis. This is when God's giving a promise to Abraham. And he says there's going to be a descendant of Abraham that's going to bless all the nations. That through Abraham all the nations will be blessed. And that will be blessed. The fulfillment of that is Jesus. Now this one is hard to get really specific on Jesus, but it's an important one, so that's why I put it here. 12:3 says, "I will bless those who bless you, and to him who dishonors you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." So the ones who trust in the descendant of Abraham will be blessed, just like Abraham was treated that way. And also those who curse the Lord will be cursed, and all the families of the earth will be blessed. The world is blessed by Christ coming. All peoples. All right, next one, descendant of David, which if you're a descendant of David, then you'd be a descendant of Abraham automatically. But 2 Samuel chapter 7 is the promise to David. Now, in Abraham, it was pretty... You get the pieces together. And Adam and Eve, you get this like, the serpent, there's going to be some kind of fight, striking to the head and stuff. You're just kind of like, I'm not really getting it. Who's this Christ to come? And then Abraham comes along and he says, well, there's going to be a blessing to the whole world through you. Okay. Then in 2 Samuel with David, 2 Samuel 7, starting in verse 12, when your days are fulfilled and you lie down with your fathers, so that's when David's dead, I will raise up your offspring after you, who shall come from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. First half of verse 13, okay? Up until then, you're just saying, okay, he's going to have a son. His son's going to reign on the throne. His son's going to build the temple. Okay. That's exactly what Solomon does. So you're just talking about Solomon here. The second half of verse 13, will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. Okay, now we're talking about something bigger than that. Solomon, long time dead. Solomon was not eternal in that way on earth, reigning. There's something going to last forever here. To have an eternal kingdom, you really need an eternal king. Verse 14, and I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son. So now you're getting a really close relationship between God and him. When he commits iniquity, I will discipline him with the rod of men, with the stripes of the son of men. But my steadfast love will not depart from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away from before you. And your house and your kingdom shall be made sure forever before me. Your throne shall be established forever. Okay, you got a lot of confusing stuff here. When he commits iniquity, who are we talking about? Jesus? Iniquity is sin. So first sounds like Solomon. Then we're talking about Jesus. That kind of sounds like we're back to another human king, or maybe we're back to Solomon, or what are we back to? This is the complexity of prophecy sometimes. It kind of goes back and forth at times. Sometimes you just, even within a verse, it's switching time periods, or it's kind of connecting these two. So when it's talking about, you would say maybe Solomon, that his kingdom will be established and he will build a house for my name. That fits for Solomon, but it also fits with Jesus. Now he established his kingdom forever. Now Solomon died, but his line goes to Jesus. So it kind of refers to them both. When he commits iniquity, well, Jesus didn't commit iniquity. So we're talking about the other ones. He's going to discipline the kings along the road, pathway, Israelite kings that would be disciplined. But then you think about it, Jesus took on the sin of the world on himself. He was struck with the rod of men, the stripes of the Son of Man. Doesn't that refer to Jesus too? Couldn't it refer to Jesus? So you have here a well-written piece that's referring really to two sides. The human only, I'm going to say human only, descendants of David that were reigned on the throne, but also this greater fulfillment of Jesus, who is human but also God, God's Son. And it talks about, I will be a father to him, and he shall be to me a son. God kind of talks to David and to Solomon, to these kings, as like a son, but not in the same tight relationship as God the Father to God the Son, Jesus, right? Jesus is the greater fulfillment of all this stuff. And he's the only one that can fully fulfill all of this.
How could he be? It says here, when he does wrong, how could that be Jesus? Of course, it sounds like Jesus ended that.
Yeah, when it says that he commits iniquity or wrong or sin, Jesus did not do that. But at the same point, he took on our sin. He took it all on himself. So he is the greater fulfillment of it, even though the kings that reigned over those times, they did commit iniquity and they were punished for it, ultimately leading to the exile and why they did not last. So there's a forever sense here, talked about here, and promised. So this one to come, this Messiah, is going to be a descendant of David. The Jews knew this very well. Everyone knew this. There was no argument about it. The Messiah was supposed to be a descendant of David. Any questions so far? I'm going through this fast, but okay, Isaiah 7:14. He's going to be born of a virgin. This is one that doesn't match anyone else, right? Actually, Isaiah 7 has the same picture of prophecy. There's a short-term fulfillment, but not a full fulfillment of it. There's kind of this picture of it to come. So actually, there's a virgin that exists there, and then that virgin does not stay a virgin and has a child, probably one in the presence there. So a prophetess there probably married Isaiah, and then they had a child. And that is a picture of there's going to be an actual virgin that stays a virgin until birth, and then that birth of a son. Isaiah 7:14, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Emmanuel, what does that mean? Your Bible has a little reference to that. God with us. Good. God, El at the end. Anytime you see El, like in Daniel, El means God. It's short as a God. So that's how you put it together. The A-H in the end of a lot of these names, while there's like Jeremiah and stuff like that, and Isaiah, the A-H is actually the name of Jehovah or Yahweh. It's the same ending. So it's also connected with a different name for God. So, little hints on name stuff you see. So whenever you see El, last name, El at the end of the name in Hebrew names, or you see Aya or Ah at the end, it probably means they named them something referring to their the God that they serve, the true God. So usually that means that they were from a good family. Just like maybe people around here, you say like, what's your kids' names? And then they're like, Daniel, Boaz. And you're like, probably, oh, maybe not Daniel, but some of the, get some names in the Bible. And you're just like, oh, that's a Christian family. They're using all Bible names. Like Lydia and Esther, all right? Maybe that guy's a Christian. He's using Christian names. So, anyway, virgin shall conceive, being a virgin, and then bear a son. So there is the initial fulfillment, but not the full fulfillment of that idea. The really one it's talking about, the picture is a true virgin giving birth, and that obviously is Jesus. Micah 5:2, another very specific one. He's going to be born in Bethlehem. I have to go through my books of the Bible to remember where Micah is. Micah 5:2, but you, O Bethlehem Ephrathah, because there was more than one Bethlehem, by the way, you are too little to be among the clans of Judah. From you shall come forth for me one who is to be a ruler in Israel, whose coming forth is from of old, from ancient days. There's a reference to that he's not just starting existence then. He actually existed before his birth, and that he will be born in Bethlehem. And even at the time when Jesus was born, remember the wise men came to Jerusalem and they asked, where's the Messiah supposed to be born? They said, well, Bethlehem. Even they knew, it's clear. Even to people that might not have believed, they knew it was supposed to be Bethlehem. Jeremiah 31:15. It gives a specific, gives a pretty clear reference to that there is going to be murders that happen at his birth, which is the ones that happened when Herod tries to kill baby Jesus. 31:15. Thus says the Lord, a voice is heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping. Rachel is weeping for her children. She refuses to be comforted for her children because they are no more. This that is happening at this time, and in the area of Benjamin, that there is a lamentation and bitter weeping. And then it refers to it in Matthew chapter 2, that it was a fulfillment This murder of the children was a fulfillment of this prophecy in Jeremiah 31. This is one of those that's less clear, right? You'd read this passage, you would not know for sure that this has to be the Messiah, and that you would have trouble maybe, if Jesus has not yet come, you'd have trouble taking this verse and being able to say, clearly, I know what's going to happen, right? And so that's why I think there really is two types of prophecies. You could summarize them in two groups. There are prophecies of things to come. There are prophecies that are clear, and you can read them and go, I know about what's going to happen. And there are other ones that are like, either it's a prophecy and you don't know what it's about, or you don't even realize it's a prophecy until it happens. Some of the Psalms, you just think David's talking about himself, and then you're like, oh, wait, that matches up exactly with what Jesus went through. There's more going on here. It's not just about David and what he went through. It's actually what Jesus went through. All right, any questions? Get through a few more. Hosea 11:1. When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. And you're going to say, well, that could be referring to the nation of Israel that was called out, right? The nation of Israel, during the time of Moses, was called out of Egypt. Well, that's just referring to Moses. But he also says, I'm my son, which is a reference that God does sometimes with the nation of Israel. But more specifically, you see later, that when Jesus escaped Herod with his parents, he went down to Egypt and came out of there. So here's one of those passages, again, you would not see if you read it at the moment, that it was a prophecy of the Messiah. But looking back on it and go, oh, that's talking about more than just him, or about the nation of Israel at that point. It's actually talking about the Messiah as well. You kind of seen some of the differences here, how sometimes there's a local reference that it kind of refers to, and then there's other times it's just talking clearly about the future. That can only be that. Any questions, or we getting this? Can you nod if you're getting it? Shake your head, I'll explain it some more. You're like, please don't explain it anymore. So there's a pattern here. There's prophecies that are very clear. Reading it at the time, you can know it's a prophecy about the Messiah. Other times you don't know it is until after it happens, and like, oh wow, that matches up again. And if only one of those matched up, it'd be, you're just kind of tying in things that aren't there. But when they're matching up over and over and over, hundreds of times in the Old Testament, you're realizing there's a lot more going on here than just a couple random matches with somebody. There is clear prophecy going on, but some of it is hidden. Psalm chapter 2, God's Son, verse 7 through 11, or 7 through 12. I will tell the decree. The Lord said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, the ends of the earth your possession. I shall break them with a rod of iron. I shall dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Now therefore, O kings, be wise, be warned, O rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and you perish in the way, for his wrath is quickly kindled. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. Now, this passage is more second coming than first coming, but it is talking about that there is a son, the Son, that he is going to be the Son of God. And then we'll end with Daniel 7, talking about him being the Son of Man. And this isn't the only time it talks about Son of God and Son of Man in Old Testament. Just kind of pick out some highlight ones. Verse 13 of chapter 7, I saw in the night visions, and behold the clouds of heaven, and there came one like a son of man, so like a human, and he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him, and to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. This is lofty language, right? This isn't about a normal king. It's talking about eternity, the entire world, forever under his rule, handed directly from God. This is talking about someone beyond a normal human, or an only human. Jesus was fully God, fully man. But it still describes him as Son of Man. So it's describing him in godlike terms, but it's also describing him as a man. The only way you have that is Jesus. Fully God, fully man, together is the fulfillment of this. So again and again, you have these fulfillments in the Old Testament that are pointing to someone to come, some of them very clearly, this is the one to come, and others of them it just seems to be talking about something in kind of descriptive language, and then later on you come back and you see, oh, that matches exactly with Jesus. That was actually talking about Jesus too. So those prophecies you can put together. Now, I'll do a quick extrapolation with Revelation and the things we're going to get to. When we're looking in the forward, if God continues his pattern that he does in the Old Testament about Jesus coming and first coming, what do you think he's going to do for the second coming? There will be references that we can look at, we can work through, and you can make a pretty good guess about what's going to happen approximately. And there's going to be other things that you won't even know as prophecy, or certainly won't seem very clear until he actually comes, and then you're going to say, oh, wow, that really was, he was talking about him there. In that place, I didn't even think he was talking about him. There'll be extra things that when Christ comes back again, we will see in the scriptures that we didn't see yet, and we'll say, oh, wow, it was talking about him in so many other places as well. By the way, he comes in the second coming. That's my guess, because that's how he did in the first coming. That God's pattern, if God continues the same pattern of prophecy, there's literal fulfillments that you can understand and other ones you won't understand, but are still literal fulfillments later on. All right. Did you hang with me? Did you make it to the end? Did I leave you on the way somewhere? Any questions? You can also do private questions. If you're scared about asking in front of everyone else afterwards. So let me pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this time. I thank you that you have given us so many pictures of the future. You show that you do know the future, Lord, and it's all in your hands, Lord, all in your control. Help us to trust you about that, and help us to dig in the scriptures to find the truths that you've given us, even if it takes some work, to better understand what you have planned for us. And we look forward to just all that will come when Christ comes back. May Christ come back soon, and please help us to be faithful until that time. In Jesus' name, amen.